we actually have a quorum. We're going to try calling. That was very quick. Good job. All right. This is a good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're now calling the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. I'm Council President Pro Tem Ruth Galanter. Council President Ferraro will, we hope, be here later. Let's start by calling the roll.
Burnson, Chick, Fuhr, Galanter, Goldberg, Hernandez, Holden, Misakowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley, Thomas, Swarnich, Wax, Walters, Ferraro, 10 members present, a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you. Let's start with the approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes.
Do we have any minutes? We did it yesterday. All right. Mrs. Chick will move the minutes and we'll have a unanimous vote. Go ahead. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Without objection, unanimous vote.
Before beginning the regular agenda, there are several items council has requested to continue. Item number 1, applicant consents to continuance to February 2nd.
Okay, so ordered.
Item number 2, applicant consents to continuance to February 9th.
So ordered.
Item number 3, applicant consents continuance to February 23rd.
This is very exciting. So ordered.
Items 20 and 24, those items are, resolutions can be received and filed inasmuch as the violations have been corrected.
Always good to hear. Without objection, so ordered.
And item number 22, request to continue to March 21st.
And without objection, we'll do that as well.
Item number 31, request to continue to Friday. And item number 18, I believe you want, there's a request to continue to February 9th.
Any objections to that? So ordered. Which brings us, I think, back to the beginning of the agenda.
Next item, Madam President, are you have confirmation of city officials. Items 4 and 5 are, and 12 and 13. Councilmember Goldberg has requested that 13 be held on the desk until she arrives.
She is expected, though.
Yes,
correct?
Madam President.
All right, let's take the others. I'm sorry, say the numbers.
Items 4 and 5 and 12.
Why don't you all step forward now? All 4 of these are appointments to the same body we discussed yesterday, are they not?
Yes, Madam President.
And to the gentleman whose item was held, I think let me just explain to you, but I don't think there's anything wrong here. I think that Ms. Goldberg simply had a couple of questions and she wanted to be here to ask them personally. So do we have any idea when she's expected?
She's expected around 11 o'clock,
Well,
but she
that's-
should be here earlier than
we'll
that.
hope that she comes earlier than that. Mr. Holden pushed his button first.
Well, I think we should wait on Ms. Goldberg. Period.
You want to hold all 4 of them till
Yeah.
11 o'clock?
Well, I can ask Ms. Griego a question since she's so in tune to what's happening in the 10th District. Why you want to be a commissioner? To take this job you got? You're busy with your business, aren't you?
I am very busy with my
Well, then
business.
do you have time for this job?
I will make the time.
You don't make the time.
I will make
Nice.
the time. I think that I've put in quite a bit of work on banking, and I hope that some of my expertise could be helpful.
Banking and business.
Yes.
And politics in the 10th District.
A little bit of politics.
All right. I think you qualify.
Okay.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we have, is it item 4, 5, 12, and 13 that we're considering at the same time?
Ms. Goldberg had asked that one of those items be held,
Which one was that?
13.
Okay. Okay,
And
so
then
these-
Mr. Holden suggested that we hold them all and do them all at the same time.
Okay,
What I would hope is that we can let these people go back to work.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Members of the council, again, the bank linkage ordinance has been something we've been working on for years, and part of that ordinance called for the development of an oversight committee. And in the development of the oversight committee, it not only included the input of the mayor's office, but the council and council office's recommendations. And what you have before us is a body of individuals who basically creates some kind of a balance that represents the communities and those organizations who've been dealing with the redlining issues and banking issues in terms of their lack of response to the community, as well as some individuals from the banking industry who tend to be the representatives on the community redevelopment part of banking responsibility, as well as individuals like Ms. Grego, who've been part of our challenges as a deputy mayor, as well as Rebuild LA, as well as the Community Development Bank, and she is someone who brings a particular type of expertise. So in creating the oversight board, I continue to look at the whole committee and how it is that the committee would serve overall, and the delicate balancing of putting all these different kinds of individuals who would basically produce a greater product was part of the process. And so I'm just asking for a unanimous vote of all of them. This is the first time we've had an oversight committee. Of course, it's part of now implementing the bank linkage ordinance and some of the study work that has to happen, and the committee needs to do its work, because there's another recommendation before you today in regards to part of the development of the bank linking ordinance that they have to be able to review. So I just urge a unanimous vote at this time.
I'm informed that Ms. Goldberg is on her way, so we expect her before 11 o'clock. Mrs. Walters, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to speak on behalf of Ms. Griego. I continue to be amazed at her energy and her dedication to the city of Los Angeles. She never says no when she's called upon to do some very difficult tasks, and I, for one, have really appreciated her work. I think you've done an outstanding job, Ms. Griego, in all the difficult undertakings that you've done on behalf of the city. And people should know that, and I certainly will vote very enthusiastically for your appointment to this. And if I knew the other persons, I could probably say the same thing for them, but I'm not acquainted with them. But I'm delighted to be acquainted with you and to witness your outstanding contributions to the city.
Let's take note of the fact that Ms. Goldberg is here, and perhaps we can join item 13 into this discussion and invite you up here if we can find you a chair. Mr. Fewer is next.
Ruth, I was going to move the question, but given that now we have everybody here.
Well, we have everybody here and 3 more people who want to speak.
All right. Well, I just want to, again, then I'll echo Ms. Walters' enthusiasm for Ms. Griego's appointment. Again, I have no familiarity really in depth with the other candidates, but I think we should take care of getting these appointments to take place today and defer to Ms. Goldberg's question for the gentleman in item 13.
Hang on. Ms. Goldberg, you're next.
If we're discussing 4, 5, and 12, I have no questions.
No, we're discussing
except
all
to
of
say
them
I'm
now.
thrilled.
No,
If we're talking about 13, it really isn't have to do with the gentleman who I don't know, Mr. Kang. My question is that in my understanding is there was supposed to be a community-based organization slot, and that the appointment in item 13 was supposed to fill that slot. I looked at the gentleman's resume, and he's going to obviously bring to the board experience as an investment banker, which will be helpful, so that's not a problem. But I want to know, where do we get the community-based organization slot to be filled from if this position is filling that slot, if you know what I'm saying?
I think we'll let Mr. Hernandez answer that one.
Okay.
And again, members of the council, when we're looking at the committee, we're looking at it as a whole as to how many individuals were representative of community-based organizations. One of the members who, my understanding, comes from the Green Lining Coalition, is basically in San Francisco. Gilda Haas is also part of it. When we're looking at the slots, we're looking at different individuals filling different roles.
Okay.
And that's why I've been urging a unanimous approval of the committee as a whole, because it included that balance as part of it.
All right. Will there be a representative of affordable housing community somewhere in this?
My understanding is one of that,
I think you can certainly count Gilda Haas as one of those.
but who's the representative from San Francisco? Because he was part of the people who came and gave some. Alan Fisher. He has not been. He's part of the committee also.
Okay. Okay. And again, Mr. Kang, I don't know you, this is not about you, but I was trying to look at the group as a whole and to make sure that we had community-based organizations represented, because from our point of view, you know, this is all about not just conformance with the letter of the Community Reinvestment Act, but also the spirit of it. and making sure that lower-income communities have access to credit and banking services. That's the whole point of this oversight committee. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were having representation that dealt with that, and when I saw that this slot was an investment banking person, not that I don't think that expertise will be helpful, but I was worried that we weren't taking care of the community-based organization slot.
Well, if it'll make any difference, I'm the vice chairman of the board of the Korean American Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization.
There you go.
community-
See, I didn't see that.
And
There
I'm,
you go.
I'm also a
Thank
board member
you.
of the Asian Pacific American Legal Center.
I will sit down now. I move approval of all of them. Thank you very much.
Took care of her, didn't you? Ms. Mizikowski?
I was just rising to stand. I appreciate and agree with what Ms. Walters said about Ms. Griego and her experience and what she's going to bring to the board. But as Ms. Walters said that she wasn't familiar with a number of the others, I thought I would get up, and I think I've heard some of the council members mention Ms. Haas, but Ms. Haas is clearly has been a long-standing person involved in these kind of issues from a social justice perspective. She, I first met her when she was a council staff person, as I was a council staff person, raising the issue of needing to provide housing, appropriate access. So she's very involved, I think, from community-based organization backgrounds in community and economic development with a social conscience. So again, whether or not each of the slots work in the way that they're supposed to, I think we do have in common depth and breadth and variety of persons being nominated and appointed to this board who cover a lot of the important issues that I think need to be. And so I was just going to share that with the council and concur with, I think, hopefully what will be a consensus unanimous vote.
Mrs. Chick? All right, well, Mrs. Walters wants to speak again, and I would just like to say, just for a little variety here, that I've known Ms. Haas since before I knew anybody else in this council chamber. So, all right, Mrs. Walters.
I want to apologize. Ms. Goldberg isn't the only one that may be somewhat embarrassed. I met... I knew something was different. I knew something was different. I would certainly add my commendations of equal enthusiasm for you, Ms. Haas, and for the work that you've done for affordable housing in the city and housing for low and very low income people. It's outstanding, and I welcome you to this position.
Okay, there being no one else who wants to speak, we have 4 items before us. We have all 4 of them before us. Open the roll on all 4 of them. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Thank you all you're all approved, confirmed forthwith on all of those, and we appreciate your time and your service. And we'll move to the next item.
Items for which public hearings have been held, items 6 through 11. Item number 8 has a majority and minority report, and item number 11 has 3 items, a continued housing and community redevelopment report and 2 amending motions.
It also has a card. So let's take, right. On item 8, do I hear a motion for the majority or the minority report? Yeah, let's hold those. Let's do 9 and 10. And on item 11, we've already had the hearing. We have a card from the Central City Association for the proposal. So unless I hear a motion for a new hearing, we'll vote on 9, 10, and 11. Well, 11 has an amended motion. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, you said that. Yeah, okay, let's do 6, 7, 9, and 10.
Okay, and you have
Anybody?
eight special.
Yes, 6,
Thank
7, 9, and 10. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote. Okay, 6, 7, 9, 10. All right, next item.
Items for which public hearings have not been held, items 14 through 37.
All right, do we have any, we have no cards on any of those. Do we have any specials, items? 17, what we had discussed last time was that we wanted to have the policy discussion in open session, and the attorneys would advise us if they felt the need to go into closed
Okay,
session.
I'd like to call it special.
Let's call that one special.
And 11, I don't know.
What happened to 11?
Okay, next, where are we here? We have, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, give me the numbers again.
Items 14 through 37, Councilmember Goldberg called number 17 special, and Councilmember Miskowski called item 37, 6.
36?
Did we continue item 18? I'm sorry, Madam Chair, as well as item 22? Okay.
Yes,
And-
we did
and-
the continuations.
And what happened to item 11?
Item 11's held on the desk,
Okay, okay.
because we have several motions and amendments
Right,
going now.
okay, I
All
didn't see it on the board,
Let's
so-
finish off the ones that we don't have anything special about, which you probably ought to do the numbers one more time, just because we got lost there.
Items 14, excuse me, items, yes, 14 through 37, with the exception of the items that have already been acted on. The continued items, item number 17 was called special, and item number 36 called special.
All right. 37 is called special.
I just want to have.
All right. Are we ready to vote on the others? Open the roll, close the roll.
12
Tabulate
ayes.
the vote. There we go.
Madam
All right.
President, forthwith on item 35, please.
Forthwith on item 35. All right. Now, before we go on, let me just take a few minutes, less than a few minutes of your time for an introduction. We're joined this morning by a delegation of the Brandeis University National Women's Committee Los Angeles chapter, who are visiting us. They are made up of Friends of Brandeis University in Waltham, Mass. 112 chapters all over the United States and a membership of 55,000 people, many of whom vote here in the city of Los Angeles. The Los Angeles chapter has over 1,600 members, and they are a support group for education and research, and with a focus on the university libraries. So if you ladies would like to, and gentlemen, if there are gentlemen in the group, would like to stand up and be welcomed, we're delighted to have you here today. Thank you for coming. Okay, next item.
Next item, Madam President, you have the closed sessions. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yeah, we better hold those and go back to the specials.
Item number 8, called
Number
special,
8 is
majority
the
and minority
first.
report.
All right. Item number 8. We have, you're moving A, the Budget and Finance Committee Majority Report, which is to waive the fees. Would you mind explaining? Well, Mrs. Walters wants to be heard. Go ahead.
Yes, I do wish to be heard on that. Thank you, Madam President. I argued against the waiving of these fees in Budget and Finance because I think that the Disney Hall, Concert Hall should pay those fees with the city in the financial straits that it is. One of the things that I didn't mention in Budget and Finance Committee that council members I want to bring to your attention now. When the Department of Recreation and Parks or any other department goes about a building project, they are required to pay the city fees. And we don't waive those fees. So why should we waive the fees of the Disney Hall? Because it's a good project and we'll all enjoy it, or people with money will enjoy it. But still, I think Disney Hall is a great project, and I look forward to them completing it. I think the design is just an outstanding one that will draw attention to Los Angeles for many years to come. That has nothing to do with whether or not they should pay the fees to the city, and nothing to do with whether or not we should waive them. And it seems to me if we charge our own departments fees for things that they're building, we certainly ought to charge them other outside groups fees that are similarly required. There's $250,000 involved here on these fees, and it's $250,000 that the city ought to have in its treasury. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fewer.
I think so. Hold on. Thank you, Madam President. I want to speak in support of the majority report from Budget and Finance. The original discussion before it got to committee was a proposal to waive fees, both those that are on the table now and business license fees for the operator, for the builder of the of Disney Hall. That is not, however, what the recommendation from the CLA and CAO was. They jointly recommended that we continue to charge the business fee, but merely waive the fees associated with the construction of the site. About half of what was on the table, about $240,000. The majority report reflects the committee majority's view that the Disney Hall will provide meaningful benefits to the city, that the county, for example, has contributed or waived millions of dollars associated with this project because of its civic importance. And in response to Ms. Walters' argument that we don't waive fees for, say, Rec and Parks, we should recognize that when there are fees associated with a Rec and Parks project, it's all city money. It just goes from one department to another because we want to be able to charge back departments for work associated with them, but the city's taxpayers, in any event, are in the same position as if the fees weren't charged at all. So I strongly recommend that we move forward. A, the city would be a relatively minor contributor to this project that'll have a very lasting legacy for all of us in Los Angeles.
Mr. Wax.
I don't often disagree with my colleague, Mrs. Walters, but I do on this one. The Rec and Parks analogy is not an accurate one in that it's, as Mr. Fuhrer said, in essence, from one pocket to another. In this case, it makes a significant difference. Partly the county and partly private contributors are contributing a couple of $100 million to give this city one of its great cultural facilities. The least we could do is this to facilitate it. We should be setting a tone. We should be setting a message that cultural institutions like this in all parts of the city, representing all disciplines and all cultures, are critically important to our city, and this is the least we could do to facilitate it. We should be so grateful that people have come forward with a couple of $100 million, and that the county has certainly contributed its share, the lion's share of government support. I think this is the least we can do. I think it's important that we send messages that these are important to us, and I can think of so many other ways in which we spend money of less value than this. So I really feel strongly that I want to support the majority report on this one.
Mr. Hernandez.
You know, members of the council, Ms. Walters made a statement that we don't waive fees for some of the projects that are for our departments, and I think in some instances we should consider that, that's part of my philosophy. If the project's important enough to a community or important enough to children, like a child care center and so forth, sometimes we're the ones that create the delays, and the permits is what makes the projects prohibitive. In this case, I just want to point out, and I agree with Mr. Fuhrer, the majority of the comments to this point, that the county itself waived $2.7 million. Los Angeles Unified School District waived $104,000. The reality is California Cultural Affairs Commission has provided $10 million in grants towards a fundraising effort of $271 million, and the county issued bonds. This is not a private entity from the perspective of its purpose, and I think its purpose is going to be very much public, and it's going to be one of the things that's going to be recognized throughout the world as being in Los Angeles, and it'll be serving many different communities, part of it being a children's hall. And so from my perspective, I think that we should be no different than some of the other public entities and help stimulate the development of the center as quickly as possible and participate in it in any way we can. And I don't think the $200,000 plus that we're being asked to waive that we could make up in the business tax that'll be paid over the same 4-year period, it should be prohibitive, and I'm going to vote with the majority of the people at this time.
Chair recognizes Ms. Goldberg.
You know, I have some problem with waiving these fees, and I think I'm probably going to vote with Ms. Walters on this, because I think the concept of saying that some projects are for the public good as compared to others when we don't waive these fees for our own projects. I know the TNI projects are paying their fees the last time I looked, and those are all public benefit projects. I just don't think there should be a double standard, and I think that that's a good principle worth upholding, so I'm going to support Ms. Walters, whatever letter that is, B, I guess.
Hal?
Chair recognizes Ms. Miskowski.
Thank you. I was the other member of the majority of the Finance Committee who support the majority report. And in addition to what everyone else has said about the issue of the prominence of this particular project, the partnership of this particular project in terms of what the state and the county are doing, as well as the private sector, I'd just like to also bring to everyone's attention that this was recommended by our own city administrative officer and CLA, and it was not recommended for the totality of what was requested to be waived, but for something that our financial advisors felt was reasonable, and that is the permit fees, but to go ahead and charge over all the 4 years of the building the contractor license fees. So I think it's a reasonable approach. It was fiscally sound, and I agree that if we're going to look at other projects that might have some public benefit where we might waive fees, perhaps we need to standardize it and review it, and perhaps Budget and Finance and some of the other committees like Arts, Health, and Humanities, whether it's libraries or parks, as we're going to be building, where there might be a legitimacy to look at waiving the fees, we should have some standard kind of format. But I urge the council to vote for the majority report. This is the city's participation in something that our other public agency counterparts have already done, and I think this is worthwhile.
Chair recognizes Mr. Holden.
Mr. President, members, we just had a group of young women just came by shaking hands, and one of the gentlemen who were with us says, charge them the fees. We're taxpayers. And I was about to go the other way, but if you say charge the fees, I'm going to charge the fees. Number one, and this project was started by primarily the county and other people within the community who would like to see this concert hall built, Disney and all. They put the name on it and they put a lot of money up. But, you know, there are people who live in and around the neighborhood who are paying the fees, then can't go. It's all similar, it's a replica of the Staples Center. I remember one member of the council, in closing the deal, gave the Staples Center an additional $12 million. And we still can't go, can't afford it. Same thing with the concert hall. So we sure like to have a concert hall here to be City of Angels. But at the same time, other projects, even a homeowner, if they have some extension of their properties, renovation of their properties, they have to pay the fees. Nobody say they should be exempted. It's like the banners that we wave to advertise. When the Dodgers were up there, nobody complained. When one of the news stations got up there, they started complaining about the other one. Pardon me, and they had to take them down. And they charge fees. I think you have to have not a double standard. I know when you had DreamWorks project going in, they waived the fees, and then they decided we didn't want your fees anyway, and they left. So I'm not prepared to vote for waiving the fees. It's not a lot of money. It's symbolic, what it represents. I think Ms. Goldberg and Ms. Walters are absolutely correct. Should not waive the fees in this project. That senior citizen just told me, Mr. Holden, I can't vote, but you vote for me. He's back in the back room now taking photographs. And not only am I voting for him, I guess, on this issue, but I'm voting for a lot of people who feel the same way. So I'm going to vote no on the majority report.
Thank you. Mrs. Walters is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, one of the things that you may not be aware of is, or one of the things of which you may not be aware, is the fact that on Prop K projects that are bonded, that are using bonded dollars, it's not a matter of from one department to the other. Those fees come right off the top before the project can go anywhere. And that money, if we were to waive, we don't waive those fees. If we were to not waive those fees, you could put more money into the project, and that would benefit the public even more. So if we're going to insist on waiving the fees for Disney Hall and various and sundry other things, then I really think that we should be very serious about waiving all fees on all Prop K projects. It seems to only be fair, because as one of you had indicated, all of these projects, and I believe it was Ms. Goldberg that indicated all of these projects are for the benefit of the city and the benefit of the children and all our constituents. So I think that we really should not, again, we should not waive these fees. And if we waive them, then we really do have to have a discussion in Arts, Health, and Humanities and Budget and Finance about waiving all of the fees for the Prop K projects.
Mr. Fuhr.
Move the question.
There being no other speakers, I think we can just advance to a vote. So we'll vote on the, now, we had a motion for the majority report, and did Mrs. Walters, and move the minority. So we'll first vote on whether to substitute the minority report for the majority report. All right, open the roll on whether to substitute the minority report for the majority report. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 5 noes.
Okay. Which, amazing. All right, then Mr. Deaton, you're in shock. Take a picture of this. We haven't seen this very often. The minority report is now before us. And if it receives 8 votes, that's the council's action. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. So the minority report, which is to not waive the fees. All right, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 6 noes.
All right. Well, then it goes over, is that correct? Goes over to the next meeting. Actually, I'm not sure.
I move it.
Is it legal to
Yes.
move the majority report?
Yes.
I move the majority report.
All right. Well, we did vote to substitute.
But then we denied the substitute.
We voted to substitute, that passed. We did not have 8 votes for the substitute once it was substituted. And so we're sort of in an impasse, and we can either bring it up at the next meeting, and somebody will move the majority report. But Ms. Mizikowski's, I just want
Move it today.
our city attorney to tell me if it's legal for us to consider the
Yes.
majority report as moved by Ms.
Yes, if
Mizikowski.
Ms. Mizikowski moves it now, you can now, it's before you.
All right,
Well,
is
let
it?
us stand then. Hold on the desk.
Somehow I have a feeling somebody's vote is going to change, or
I
she
think
wouldn't
so.
have done that.
All right.
So let's vote. We're now, Ms. Mizikowski has moved the majority report. Open the roll on the majority report.
That's fine.
Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 4 noes.
Forthwith, please.
Forthwith. And there's a lesson in there somewhere. Now, we'll discuss that at some other time. All right, we have
The people who aren't in their seats.
yes, well, it's also, if you want to vote no on something, you got to be at your seat.
That's right.
We have several more specials, 2 of which may possibly involve closed sessions. If there's no objection, I'm going to recommend that we dispense with the other ones first. So we would go then to item 36. No, but that's one of the ones I'm talking about, that may involve a closed session, and item 17 may involve a closed session. So let's jump those for the moment and go to the next one, which I believe is item 36. And we don't have any cards on 36.
Madam President, I
Ms.
call this
Mizikowski.
We, as members of the council know, have a lot of items on the state ballot in March and have been taking positions. I brought in the motion to support one of them, Proposition 12, and on my time, I'd like to ask Ms. Ellie Oppenheim of our Recreation Parks Department to come forward. This is the Safe Neighborhood Parks, Clean Water, Clean Air, and Coastal Protection Bond Act of 2000. Members of the council, we've seen success at the polls before from the public for parks and open space and recreation. And what we've also seen is as we go for grants and make opportunities for grants in our communities, we have more demand, more interest, more wish lists of what we could do if we had more money for parks and facilities in our city. And I'd like Ms. Oppenheim to speak to that, both in terms of the process, what we could do if the monies were available by the passage of the state bond, and what the department is now doing to prepare, if it passes, in terms of how we can augment what is already being done in the city. Ms. Oppenheim?
Thank you very much. Good morning. This state bond is the largest park bond in U.S. history and provides special emphasis to park acquisition and development in urbanized areas and heavily urbanized areas. If this bond act is passed, it will guarantee the city some $43 million for parks and recreation purposes from per capita and Roberti Zeeberg Harris programs. The per capita program provides monies for acquisition, development, rehabilitation, and restoration of real property for park purposes, and we would be estimated to receive some $23 million, over $23 million, $23.6, from the per capita program. The Roberti Zeeberg Harris program provides funding for rehabilitation and refurbishing, special major maintenance projects, and innovative recreation programs that respond to the unique and otherwise unmet recreation needs of special urban populations. These Roberti Zeeberg Harris funds require a match of 30% of project costs. The City of Los Angeles will qualify for block grants under the Roberti Zeeberg Harris program in both urbanized and the heavily urbanized categories, totaling some $19.5 million. These funds will significantly leverage the funds we already have available through Prop K, Prop A, and in some cases, Quimby funds. In addition, there are competitive funds allowed for in this ballot measure, and the city would be able to compete for a portion of some of the $266 million that's available to local agencies for low-income and at-risk youth programs, for urban and cultural centers and zoo programs, for regional youth soccer facilities, for riparian and river habitat projects, for trails projects, and for such things as playground replacement. We have had a continuing dialogue with the Recreation and Parks Commission on this project and its importance. In fact, this item is on their agenda this afternoon with some recommendations for priority projects, categories of projects, assuming passage of the bond. We have been and will be talking to present the facts and information with the Friends of organizations for the various park facilities and with the park advisory boards that many of you are familiar with and actively involved with. And we see very direct benefits to the city from this particular message in the form of a minimum of $43 million that we would be assured.
Thank you, Ms. Oppenheim. Members of the council, I just wanted to have this highlighted. I think it's something we will all look forward to very, very positively. The more we can spread the information, the more we can focus on what this is really doing. And as I think the emphasis on urbanized parks, rehabilitation, highly urbanized park areas is exactly what we're finding as we go through our park advisory boards, as we go through those proposals that we are helping to solicit and encourage to be funded through our own Prop K. This is just, we have learned a lot. We are learning where the areas really need attention, and this bond helps provide it. So I just want to urge a majority vote from the members of council to have the council on support on this, as well as to do as much public outreach as we individually can for the value of what this will be for our city.
Thank you. Mr. Holden is next.
This didn't go to committee, but the idea has been there once before. Michael Koch, will you go up and tell what our position is on that? We've essentially supported it, and this is a Rule 16 measure before us, and we're not changing our support. We supported the bill. Now we're going to take this position as well.
Proposition 12 was put on the ballot by the legislature through AB 18, and the city officially supported that on council action May 7th of last year. We also were trying to get some other projects in there, and we continued our support through its finishing through the legislature, and it's now become Proposition 12.
Thank you. Mr. Holden, were you finished?
Yeah, we should vote aye.
That's it? No, okay, well, not until Mr. Padilla gets to talk.
Thank you, Madam President. Also rise in support of this motion. Not to belabor the issue, I just wanted to point out two unique things about this bond measure relative to similar bond measures in the past. First of all, the designated portions of the monies, if approved by the voters, that would come to Southern California. And I know with the urban emphasis, Los Angeles can't stand but to benefit. Too often throughout the state, we invest in rural areas, in areas away from urban areas or from each of our districts. I mean, how many times have we seen a state park put into the middle of one of our council districts? So the emphasis on bringing parks, recreational use, and interaction with nature to the young people specifically in our districts is an opportunity we can't pass up. So I urge not only a majority vote, but a unanimous vote.
There being no other speakers, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14
A
ayes.
unanimous vote. Terrific. Thank you very much. All right, let's do item 37, which should be another one that doesn't require a closed session, or may not. Right, Mr. Wax, did you want to, item 37, you called it special? And could you
Well,
push the button, please? Thank you.
I did. I seconded this as a courtesy for Mr. Ridley Thomas. It was very long and very complicated, and apparently he had been approached, I think, either by the CLA or others to do this, and I, did that to bring it before us, but I want a fuller explanation because there's somewhat highly technical, complicated matters, and I want to know for certain that we are pursuing on the right track. So can perhaps you could start first.
Barrett is here
Barb Garrett with the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office.
to do that, Ms.
There are currently regulations proposed by EPA to address water quality of various water bodies. And basically what it is it's like an air quality plan where we're figuring out how we're going to control the pollution in those water bodies to achieve our goals. And some of the proposals that are put forward are problematic for several reasons. The policies that are put forward in the motion are existing policies with the exception of 3 policies. One is that we support the relook at beneficial water uses. Currently, most of the water uses in Southern California are designated municipal water sources, and because of that, they have very, very stringent water quality standards. And so what we're asking is that perhaps it may be appropriate to go back and look at those designations and see if recreational use would be more appropriate than a municipal drinking water, and then that would change the standards and the kind of controls. We're asking for a full public process for the reevaluation of such water bodies.
And I'd like the President to, particularly of interest because of your longstanding interest in this, Ms. Glenn. One of the things that you've asked us to do is to oppose water quality offset requirements. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that. And I'd like you to tell us why you're doing that, and I'd particularly like in a moment Ms. Galanter's involvement in this as well, because why would you oppose offset requirements?
The offset requirements that are requested by EPA are an interim measure. So at the time, we do not exactly know what the water quality impairment is, but as a protective measure, they're asking for offsets.
Yeah.
And the offsets, the way they are proposed, anyone who puts any additional pollution into the river, such
Yeah.
as expansion of one of our wastewater treatment plants, would have to offset that by a 2-to-1 ratio. There are several difficulties in that currently we do not have the science available to document those offsets. We do not have the permit structure in place to create those offsets. And creating that infrastructure could be a 1 to 2 year process. Also, it pushes those entities, the people who want to develop an infill
But
such as in
it isn't the new
brownfields.
it isn't the person putting causing the new pollution that necessarily has to provide the offset.
Yes, that is what the requirement
Have to
is.
secure it from somebody.
From somewhere.
From somewhere, not necessarily from their own.
Not,
They can make
Correct.
an agreement with somebody, like you make
Correct.
parking agreements, and
Right,
things
but
like that.
right. The difficulty is we don't have the documentation to document those offsets
I
from
know,
other
but my
sources.
problem is to just automatically oppose something without saying we would oppose it unless, or we would support it if. You know, we often condition our positions. In this case, perhaps it seems to me like we're just simply opposing offsets generally, and I don't know that we really, I'm nervous about that, I
We-
must tell you.
We are not opposing offsets in general. It is just the ones that create urban sprawl or have a significant administrative burden. And I think that offsets in the future actually may be appropriate. What we've offered in the interim is, if you look, we have offered as an interim measure that we require new developments to have the best technology in place, and we have reasonable further progress for existing facilities.
Let me just conclude, as a matter of policy, these are the kind of things that really should go to committee. These are really hard to just grasp on specials and really try to understand this. Fortunately, I mean, I'm relying a lot on my staff's input. These are complicated matters, and normally they should go to a committee, and they should have a lot of input from the relevant parties. Otherwise, there's a lot on faith here.
Madam President, if I may.
All right,
As
Mr. Ridley Thomas, go ahead, as chair of the
committee.
Water Quality, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Wax, I appreciate your seconding this motion, and the questions you raise are equally appreciated and I should say important. This is a time-sensitive matter. It is my understanding that we have a deadline literally tomorrow. Is that not correct?
Correct.
And it is because of that that we are moving forward. If there's anything that ought to be amended or altered, I think it is fully possible to do that now. Anything that is deemed to be particularly disturbing or controversial, we ought to just take care of that and move the policy forward in a way that we are most comfortable. Barring that, Madam President, I would simply move the report as it is before us so that we can meet the deadline as stipulated.
Thank you. If I may just use the balance of your time, Mr. Wax?
You may.
I appreciate your asking for my comment, and I'll try to just use no more than the rest of Mr. Ridley Thomas's time. When Ms. Garrett originally brought a draft of this motion to me and had asked me to second it, I had some very serious concerns about it. By working with the CLA, those concerns were in fact taken care of, and I am happy to endorse the motion as it stands today. It was a little bit of a struggle there for a while, but I think we've achieved a resolution that will in fact be in the best interests of the city. And I want to give the other people who want to speak a moment, if they're full-time, to do that before I go on anyway. But I have been significantly reassured. Mr. Holden is next. Pass. Mr. Fewer.
I have to say that, and maybe it's because I haven't had the benefit of the conversations, Ruth, that you've had with the CLA, I have been given pause from time to time about positions that I understand the city is contemplating taking with regard to other agencies on especially environmental issues, maybe exclusively those issues are the ones in which I've been given pause. And because I view the federal EPA under this administration as being appropriately aggressive on environmental issues, if anything, sometimes having to capitulate because of political realities in Congress, but I haven't been concerned they've been overly aggressive. And for that reason, I am extremely reluctant to vote in favor of the city going on record opposing anything that has to do with making more stringent environmental rules when it pertains to water quality. I have the same views regarding air quality. We're going to face an interesting local contest soon when the AQMD rules regarding getting diesel out of fleets come before this council, before the city takes any action on that. I don't see how members of council could, without the benefit at least of the in-depth conversations that the president has had, vote in support of something that includes opposition to ostensibly tougher water quality standards that might otherwise be in place. And I certainly can't do so today, irrespective of any deadline.
Well, let me suggest that we ask staff, in response to that concern, and the same concern that Mr. Wax raised, that we ask staff to talk a little bit about the implications for urban sprawl, because the thing that persuaded me is that we often wind up imposing regulations, and you know about the law of
Right.
unintended consequences, and what happens is that we then wind up inadvertently forcing development to the outskirts of the metropolitan
Right.
area, which contributes to further
Yeah,
environmental.
and I understand that concern. What's a little complicated is often I find personally that I learn when I get the chance to hear from both sides on a given issue. And today, we'll have the benefit of, I'm sure, a very instructive discussion from the CLA and the CLA staff on this issue, but we won't have the opportunity to hear from advocates for these perspectives.
Okay, well-
Clearly, Carol Browner has thought about the sprawl issue as well, and they had
I
some...
hope so, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
count it.
So I'm welcoming the comments, but I'm uptight about voting for it without
Okay.
hearing from
Well,
opponents
And I
of
have,
this.
let's let the CLA respond, and I have two more
Point of
council members.
personal privilege, Madam President.
Yes, no, I have you
Is
there.
this
Many of
Mark,
us are-
is the ear thing like Carol Burnett?
Yes,
Is that
it's
what
quite related to my comments. Many of us are anxious to arrest your tightness, so anything we could do to accomplish that, since you publicly confessed, we're here for you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you,
Wait,
Mark.
let's go first to the CLA. Do you guys want to respond?
I just
to
would
that?
like to, first off, that the rule would say that we couldn't develop in pockets within the city because we couldn't do any expansion
Wait, hold on. Are you, Mike?
within our wastewater system. And basically, our suggestion is that we would support programs which require the installation of the best practical control technologies. I fail to understand how a position that says that we want the best technology available to control this is anti the environment. And Mr. Fuhr brought up the fact of the rule in the AQMD, and we will have the same kind of discussion with that rule, because the problem with that rule is there's no infrastructure in order to implement that rule, nor is there the engines in order which to implement the rule either. And so what in the zest to move ahead on some of these environmental issues, I don't agree that they have taken some of these things into account. They seem to jump ahead of the game before they have the technology and the ability to get it done on the ground. And even those of us who believe that some of these things should be done, we think that they should be done economically, and they should be done within the context of what is technologically feasible, as opposed to looking for the tooth fairy.
Okay, now we have 5 people who want to be heard, and 2 of them haven't spoken yet. So, Ms. Mizikowski, you're up next.
As former chair of Environmental Quality Committee, I also worked closely with the CLA and did hear, as I'm sure many of my colleagues had from some of the other interests, the environmental interests have concern on this. And I think that the way that the language is fashioned in this, it says we're not opposing water quality offset requirements, we're opposing them where they promote urban sprawl or they have these other unintended consequences, and they can potentially be a disincentive to doing where we want to do our infill in the inner city, where there may be very little or very costly alternatives, and the alternative is sprawl. Ms. Galanter is right in terms of those unintended consequences. We're all now dealing nationwide with MTBE, the contaminant that was so good for our gasoline and our air quality and is horrid for our water quality. I think this is a well-fashioned approach, a well-fashioned policy for the city, and recognizes that we have balances. There's not one mandate that is always the absolute. It's got to be taken in context, and I think this proposal is, as best as possible, attempts to reach that balance and put it in the context of other appropriate goals that we as a city, particularly an urban, heavily dense and urbanized city, need to deal with. So I support the resolution as it's presented.
Ms. Goldberg.
I'm trying to understand the consequences. If there's going to be growth and there's no urban sprawl, which everybody is against, then where's the growth going to go?
Playa Vista.
In the cities? Well, with our zoning, since in the cities doesn't mean most of your districts, it probably means in my district, Mr. Hernandez's district, Mr. Ridley Thomas's district, Mr. Padilla's district,
What's going
Mrs.
in?
Walter's district. some of other places. I'm not so sure I'm prepared to vote on something which says all of the growth of the future should be in the areas that are already the most densely packed. But that sounds like, from the discussion I just heard, what the outcome would be. Because what is urban sprawl to some people is to other people a sharing of the need to have housing and businesses in all parts of an area and not just in the areas that are already the most densely populated. So tell me if I'm missing a point here, because if I am, I want to be correct. I'm just listening to the conversation. That's what it sounded like to me. That's the first question. The second question is, do we have to do this today? I was in the restroom,
Yes,
so I didn't hear the
if we're going
answer.
to do it, we have to do it today because the
Okay.
board is meeting tomorrow.
Okay, and-
Comments are due tomorrow.
I see. And my third comment is, this Congress has notoriously been pulling down environmental concerns, ending them, decreasing them, defeating them, left and right. I'm a little concerned that if they're actually willing to do anything that's environmental, that we should oppose it, because they do, so far as the record in environment's been concerned, this Congress has not been, shall we say, excellent. Well, I would say it's not even been good or average, it's actually been poor. So that's my other concern is to whether or not we should be opposing anything this Congress does for the environment, since it does so little.
Well, if it's really for the environment.
By the way, this is not for the, this isn't a bill. This is a EPA rule. And it's a give and take process of trying to understand the consequences of the various rules, and developments within the city that would discharge into the city wouldn't be able to be allowed, but discharges from other parts might be. And we think that the technology, the best technology should be used in any development to minimize the water, and that should be across the board. It's a more equal way of applying the environmental rule. And it has to do, the water offsets, we think, penalizes the city, relatively speaking, and urban areas unnecessarily. We do not think that it should be willy-nilly anybody be able to do what they want to do. They should have to follow through on the technology of the discharge. Whether
But
you're
did
in,
you address that if it isn't in the outlying areas, it's going to be more heavily in those areas that are already very dense? This growth?
I will when you give me
I
that
think that's
chance.
Okay. That's my concern.
Okay, let's go through the rest here. Mr. Burnson.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what this really entails, okay? We do have a water quality element of our general plan, don't we? Framework that contains, does that meet the federal standards and state standards?
It would
I
not
presume it does, doesn't it?
It
If
would
this
meet-
is a new rule.
This rule, it wouldn't meet this new rule.
How does this rule differ from the other rule? I mean, and what changes does it make in this new rule?
Well, for example, any firm that would discharge into the river, you would have to get twice the offsets.
You have to get what?
Twice the offset for the amount of water discharged into the river.
So in other words, this basically is going to make it more difficult to develop housing and other economic needs? Is that what this effect
That's
will
right.
be?
Within the, what we're suggesting is a process that would be more equal across various areas. We believe that best available technology for that should be applied to both the facilities in the urban areas as well as the outlying areas.
So that's the
rule.
recommendation that's
That's
before
right.
us, is that we apply that, so we're not fully adopting or supporting what this does?
No,
We're
we're suggesting
recommending
an
some
alternative,
adjustments
and
in
an
it.
alternative.
Okay, I must tell you, obviously, I've listened to comments about development as attached to this, and obviously it has implications with that, and perhaps we should have had somebody from the planning department to really give us some insight on that, and I don't know if anybody is here today, but I don't know whether I'm prepared to act on this today either. I think I would like to look into a little more to specifically what it is, what the impact of this is going to be before I make a determination. It sounds good, yes, but if it's going to have a impact that we don't understand at this stage of the game, and I think that we ought to have this evaluated by our planners. Cindy, I don't know, I know you've spent some time with us, and I know that Ruth has, but have you gotten any information from the planning department as to how this might impact development of our housing to accommodate the growth that's going to take place and the economic development of jobs in our area?
Cindy is on the list to respond.
Maybe somebody can answer that for me. I'd like to have another little longer look
If I
at it.
can, on your, just answer it quickly, my concern is that this is not just opening the door to say there should be infill development, but if this occurs with an offset requirement on water quality for development where we are encouraging it in some of our infill or inner areas, and Ms. Goldberg, you mentioned this, there are some projects that you have supported in your district. We know that there are significant economic and mitigation burdens because they have to deal with traffic, they have to deal with other things. This would be a significant economic burden, additional mitigation that may make a project where we want to encourage it not affordable. And so it's going to be a further detriment to doing the kinds of things we want to work in a total package, and is going to make easier the sprawl because the burden there is less difficult, there's less runoff problems in those areas that can't be more easily managed. So this is really detrimental to doing what I think our good planning process and policies have suggested we want to do.
It is detrimental?
Yes. Excuse me. This would, unless it's adopted, it would be detrimental. It would
Right,
be,
if we leave it with the offset
leave it where it is.
requirement the board, that EPA is proposing without taking this
these- yes,
position, then
exactly.
we got a problem. Okay, well, hold on, Mr. Hernandez is next.
Members of the council, again, I just, Mr. Deaton said, and our options are to submit comments or not to submit comments. I think what Mr. Deaton, what the motion's asking is that we basically consolidate the departments of the city's opinions, that we work and have one voice as a city in submitting comments to this major rule change. And that's what's happening right now. So I think that a lot of the dialogue has been important because it at least shares with people where we're at, and we're hearing from Mr. Deaton what his perceptions are. But what the motion is actually commenting is for us to participate in something that's being proposed by submitting our comments as to what our perceptions are. And I just, now that I understand that, it's not taking a position on legislation that's pending before Congress, but rather it's submitting comments on a proposed rule change that someone has out there, and I just wanted to kind of provide that clarity because I urge that we support the motion before us.
I'd like to make a motion, an amending motion to the motion I seconded here, and where it says oppose water quality offset requirements, et cetera, I'd just like to change the word from oppose to question. I think that this discussion today raises enough questions for us to feel that we really should question this, but we need to give a little bit more thought till we have a definitive position. And I would move that the word oppose be changed to the word question.
Second.
Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Previous question.
All right, we have Mr. Ridley Thomas, Mr. Fewer, Ms. Mizikowski. She'll pass. All
I
right.
have a further amendment.
Courtesy to Mr.
Let's go to Mr. Fewer, and then we'll come back to Mr. Ridley.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the courtesy. As I've now gone through this in a little more depth, other provisions begin to concern me too. Not many, but a few. The first bullet, for example, says support, in essence, reducing pollutants at their source, where it's demonstrated to be cost efficient. That is precisely, recall when Henry Waxman was doing battle with Republicans in Congress over air quality standards. This is exactly the battle. Because cost efficient by whose assessment? The cost efficiency provision of this, and some level, who can argue that costs matter? Of course they should be taken into account in some way. By the same token, this is so open-ended as to defeat important measures that are necessary for the long-term future of all of us. Because in the short term, we take into account some costs and not others. For example, I get concerned when costs are taken into account of building out something where there's no counterbalancing economic analysis of the immediate health impact in terms of cost as well as human suffering from not doing something. So, and that part of the economic analysis is never taken into account because the dollar figures are so much harder to ascertain. So if we were to eliminate in the first bullet the phrase, I will move that we eliminate the phrase, where it is demonstrated to be cost efficient. In the fourth bullet, there's also a reference to cost, but I think it's okay because it says include consideration and evaluation of, among other things, costs. I actually would move that we eliminate the water quality set-off provision altogether, so we just don't, because I think questioning it and eliminating it have the same impact, and we're not in the same territory. And the other provision that gives me, let's see, and I think that for the moment that's sufficient. I would make those amendments to this.
Ms. Galanter?
You know, I appreciate everybody's concern here, and this is a council that is typically and consistently concerned about the environment, but I do want to remind you that just because it says environment doesn't tell you anything. It's what it says about the environment that matters. All the lawyers who defend the developers when we sue them because they're doing something awful to the environment describe themselves as practitioners of environmental law, and with some accuracy. So, you know, just don't get too excited about the word itself. The thing I also want to stress, which Cindy mentioned earlier, which I think is very important, is that what we're really talking about here is the imposition of requirements that may not be a one-size-fits-all requirement. And we all know, because we represent districts that differ from each other, and within each district we have hillsides and flatlands and high-density areas and low-density areas, that it's very hard to craft a rule that will fit over everything. The problem here is that and the answer to the question you raised, Jackie, about where the growth goes, is that when we start pushing it out farther and farther into the suburbs, because it's easier to find water offsets, which is what this is really about, out there, it's harder to provide bus transportation, for example, because the people aren't close enough together. It gets more and more expensive to provide these other kinds of services. And that's true not only in the suburbs, but within areas of the city of Los Angeles. Nothing in the proposed motion would require us to change our zoning laws. What it would require is, if it would essentially put the city on record as saying to EPA, one size does not fit all. We can show you throughout the city of Los Angeles areas where a blanket restriction may be inappropriate, and there may be a better way to do this. And I think we ought to leave, I'm comfortable with Mr. Wax's suggestion of questioning the offsets as opposed to opposing it, because I know it hurts to say we're opposing an environmental measure here, but I don't think we should omit it, because I think we should be questioning it, because, again, as Cindy pointed out, if we are stuck with the offset rule as EPA is proposing it, some of the developments, I think you may not have heard this, but some of the developments that you've been supporting and some that I've been supporting would be impossible to achieve. And the result will wind up as a total negative. So I think that the lesson of this discussion is that there are more of us you need to check with in the drafting stages than you thought. And that's basically a good sign, even though it means more work, because it means more people are taking more interest in it. But I would urge support for the original motion with Mr. Wax's suggested change from opposed to question. And I would urge us not to let this opportunity pass, because if the opportunity does pass, EPA is going to say, well, you know, where were you when we proposed the rule? And we can't afford that.
Ms. Mizakowski?
Previous question.
Ms. Mizakowski moves the previous question. No one else wants to be heard, so I will say that the previous question has passed. All right, what do we have before us?
Mr. Fear's motion, amending motion on bullet number 1 to delete the wording where it is demonstrated to be cost efficient, and on bullet number 4 to delete the entire bullet.
Yeah. Why don't you separate those two things? Do them one at a time.
I asked for
Say that motion again.
On Mr. Fear's amending motion, we didn't hear a second on it. There was...
Was there a second on Mr.? I didn't hear a second, so there's, it didn't, that failed. Next item.
Mr. Wax's amending motion to On the bullet where it says oppose water quality, to substitute the word question, water quality offset, instead of oppose.
Ms. Calanter seconds that. Prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved. Yeah. Next item.
Then, do you want to vote on the motion as amended?
We have 37 as amended. Prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes, 1 no.
That is approved. Next item is item number 11. Item number 11 before us. Any discussion?
Mr. President, on item 11, you have the committee report and 2 amending motions.
There are some cards in the,
Oh, there's
File,
only
I
one
believe.
card, but there has been a public hearing.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought we did, was
Huh?
it? 11 was, you're right, I'm sorry. It's 17 that has several.
There was a public hearing already, so it's Judy Schwartz from the Central City Association, and they're in favor of the proposal. So, all right, what are the amending?
Item number 11 it was continued, and it's an amending motion, the Housing and Community Redevelopment Committee report, and then there's amending motion A to adopt the committee report and to request the mayor and the CRA board to proceed immediately to initiate a nationwide search, and C, which is amending motion Ridley Thomas, Galanter, Hernandez, Walters, to appoint Mr. Charlin for 6 months with 2 90-day extensions, and authorize the CRA board to negotiate and execute a contract, and request the CRA board to commence a search immediately.
Okay.
Point of
Mr. Ridley Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. My recollection was that a request was made of the CLA to make a report on this item, and at that point, we should then proceed pursuant to the request or instructions of the council. Absent such a report, because I have not yet seen one, it would seem to me that we should continue 11 pursuant to the report being made to the council as was expected.
In a motion to continue?
Yes, sir. Pending the CLA report as requested.
All right, is there any discussion?
Discussion on that item, Mr.
All right,
President.
Mr. Hernandez, you have the floor.
And the reason I wanted to question it is because when I asked for the report,
Right.
it wasn't a report I asked for.
Well, when you
I
asked for the report, it wasn't a report that you
What I
asked
asked for is a recommendation from the CLA. I did not
Precisely.
ask for a written report.
No, recommendation. I accept that.
And in my dialogue with the CLA, I thought that there was a recommendation he was ready to make.
Oh, that, if there is, then I think we
Yeah.
can proceed, but I understood otherwise.
Okay, I'm confused, Mr. Deaton, then. And it's because, am I upsetting something here? Yeah, I'm just asking, because I basically had asked for some kind of your perceptions and so forth, and then I've been working with Mr. Pacheco and so forth, and that's why I didn't know if we were ready to move now, or what was actually going on.
Well, there's been confusion as to what, I guess, I had some confusion exactly what I was asked to do, and that was creating some of the problem. As it relates to this particular item, Mr. Pacheco's motion of 1 year, of a 1-year contract with an extension beyond that fits in what I think. I think that 1 year is enough time in order to, for an interim director to turn the agency around, and that so long as any extension beyond that point comes back to the council, and that there's a process that begins, a recruitment process, I think that's satisfactory. So,
And is that the amending motion that's before us right now?
I think those takes into the context of that.
And that's why I wanted, because a lot of dialogue went in regard to that amending motion. One of the things I wanted to make sure is, in terms of the collective bargaining units, I wanted to make sure that they had an opportunity to participate in the job description of the search thing, and I wanted to make sure that dialogue was open as part of that. But I'll wait for Mr. Pacheco to make his presentation and then go from there.
Said wait 9 months.
Mr. Pacheco?
I was simply going to state that I had taken into consideration everyone's concerns regarding the issue and proposed 11D with also the CLA's having a look at the motion as drafted, take into consideration what his experience and guidance provided for 11D. So I did work with the CLA's office.
Galanter?
It's my understanding. Am I on? Yeah, thank you. It's my understanding that there have been some lawsuits either threatened or filed against the agency within Mr. Charlin's tenure. Is there anything? First of all, is that true? And second of all, if it is true, is there anything we ought to know about those lawsuits that might affect our decision?
If you're asking me, my understanding...
I'll ask anybody who can answer. Maybe I should
Well,
ask Mr. Charlin, but...
My understanding is that there are lawsuits, and my understanding that's also an item in executive session.
I certainly have no
President?
objection to that, but if it's going to affect my deliberations, I'd like to know about it before I have to vote.
Mr. President,
I guess they're threatened.
let me just clarify that. My understanding is there's been 2 administrative claims made. They have not yet gotten to the point of being lawsuits in a court of law. They are in the administrative process right now, which we all know with public agencies, you first submit your administrative
Yes,
claim. They're on the verge of settlement, and the attorney from this is here if you need any information. But as we discussed at the last meeting, that would have to be done in executive
No,
session.
I appreciate that.
So that's where we are in the process.
All right, so they're still at the administrative claim stage.
Right.
There's a settlement discussion going on, so they may never reach the lawsuit stage. If
Correct.
there is a settlement and money is involved,
I understand that
whose money is it? if
There
the
is a
money's
proposed settlement going to be delivered to the full commission tomorrow. So they have worked it out among the parties. Now it's going to be considered by the full commission. Once the commission approves it, it comes to us for final approval. But that's where we
Right,
are in the
but, you know,
process.
without, I don't want to risk jeopardizing the rights of any of the parties on either side of this, but, so it's a little hard to know how to formulate my question to you or the city attorney or the CLA or whoever it is, but
I think your questions are...
my question is whether there is information I ought to have regarding the nature of the claims that might or might not affect my vote, to put it bluntly, on these various motions and amendments that are before us. And if so, I'd like to have that information before I vote.
Point of order, Mr. President, if I may.
What is your point?
Pursuant to Ms. Galanter's question, is it then appropriate to take item 38 up? And if so, I would so move and return to this item after having had a closed session discussion about the matter involving the claims and or potential litigation. I would so move.
Well, that was a point of order, it's not a motion, so when your time comes up, you can make that motion.
All
Mr.
right.
Burnson?
Well, I was going to move a previous question, but apparently that's not going to fly. And the reason I was going to do that is because I have to leave to go over to MTA. But I would hope that we could get this thing resolved. Mr. Charlin's been sitting here. I don't know how relevant the potential settlements are. It doesn't sound to me like they're relevant. Are they relevant to whether he should be approved or not? Can Mr. Pacheco answer that?
Mr. Burnson, at the committee meeting, all of the speakers who came forward that spoke either for or against Mr. Charlin agreed on one thing, that they had nothing personal to say about Mr. Charlin. All their concern was the process.
Was the process, I understand.
Right. So
Okay.
both the labor groups, anyone else.
Okay, so those things are really not relevant, so maybe this need not be debated after item 38. I don't know. I'm probably not going to be here either way, unfortunately, because I'd like to support you on this, and I think that Mr. Pacheco's motion is the right direction to go, and I would hope the council will do that. I think I expressed my concerns about a long-term thing, and I'll go along with the search, a national search, but I don't know what good a national search does when the new mayor has the right to do what he pleases. So I think that's something that we need to consider. But if it's the majority vote of the council to do a national search and spend the money, so be it, you know. But I do have confidence that Mr. Sharlin can turn the agency around, and I think that giving him at least a year on the outset with the potential of at least another year, or based upon maybe an appointment after a national search, is the right way to go. So I would hope the council would do that, and I'm not going to try to end the debate now because I think it'd be futile. But you have my views, and please proceed, and let's get on with this. This has been going on for a long time.
Okay, Mrs. Walters.
I support the motion that is yet to be made by Mr. Ridley Thomas to go into closed session to discuss these things. On the motion by Mr. Pacheco, is it in order, is that before us now? Is it in order to speak to that motion?
Yes, it's been introduced, and
Well, I have...
it's passed out.
I have some concern about some of the wording in the motion, aside from the terms of service. Item number 2 says authorize the CRA board chairperson with cooperation and assistance of the CAO. It seems to me that the chairperson of a board, of the council, or without specifically stating otherwise in that organization's charter, the chair has no authority outside a majority vote of the group. And to vest the chairperson with the right to negotiate a contract, I think is a big mistake. I think it happens, sometimes we have chairpersons who take on authority that they don't have and get us into hot water. And we witnessed that on another commission a few years ago with the zoo department and the council and the commission that oversees the zoo. And I think it's a real error to authorize the CRA board chairperson to do anything here. The staff, the proper staff would be the CAO to do this, and not involving the board chairperson. And beyond that, I'll leave that at this time, and I want to discuss it further in closed session.
Kowski, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say, in response to that, the reason that is worded that way is that the CRA board has authorized the chairperson to enter into the agreement already, so there was a vote on the existing agreement. What this motion or the action of the council would then constrain that agreement as proposed by whatever action the council takes. So it would be within those limits that it's ceremonial, and it's like when you
Well, it
approve
doesn't get acted on ceremonially, and people, I just need to discuss this in closed session.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Okay.
Ms.
and-
Kowski?
Thank you, Mr. President. Generally, as Mr. Pacheco indicated, he tried to listen to a lot of the comments we made last week, and I think his motion 11D attempts to get where there may have been some consensus. I had indicated that I was willing to support the year's extension with an option if by the conclusion of that year we had information from the CRA board that they had done their search and they were able to tell us what the results were. So we would have, at the end of next year, their recommendation in terms of a conclusion to a search and or the extension or a variation of the extension with Mr. Sharlin in terms of some transition. And then when I had indicated that we should immediately begin the search, I was persuaded by both the CLA and the CRA that if they begin the search immediately, you might find someone in 2 to 3 months, and then you've got the problem of someone in place for a year, and you're not going to get someone to say, I'll take the job 9 months from now. So what my concern was less than setting the time of when they start. I was much more concerned about when the results and the end would be completed. So I think Mr. Pacheco's motion attempts to say that within a certain period of time they must start it. They report to us 11 months out so that we know progress and we have a progress marker. Whether or not this does it, I think it's the intent to get it done, but maybe we should say, add to it, amend it, that instruct the agency board to report to the City Council within 11 months of the status of the process, with the intent that they will have concluded the process by the 12th month and be able to make recommendations. So if whatever we need in there, additional language to say that's the intent, that this is not 11 months they come back and say, gee, we are still defining what the position is, we've had difficulty in finding people. They need to know up front with outside consultation or whatever they need, that they need to bring this to conclusion to us by December. And that's what my intent was with my first motion. And I think Mr. Pacheco's motion tries to get there, but perhaps we can look at additional language.
Thomas?
Mr. President, members of the council, I would move that we take up item 38 in executive session and return to item 11 in open session once having had that discussion and or disposed of the matter appropriately. And I would hope for a second.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez?
Members of the council, understanding item 38 is still something we're going to be considering. I don't think it had anything to do with this process. I haven't heard that, but if that's what the body chooses to do, I'm willing to listen to it. I just want to keep us focused on what's before us right now and the reasons for it. I think that previously we were concerned about the process and the fact that the council had set a direction at one point, and then that direction changed without us really being aware of it when the search process was terminated or was not continued. At our last meeting, I basically explained that I thought that what was important is that we started new and we have an understanding of what we need to do. And what my understanding is that Mr. Charlin needs approximately about a year to be able to complete his work. And the question became, what happens at that year? Are we going to want to have choices, or are we not going to want to have choices? And so part of, I think, what the amending motion did was require the commission to initiate the search 9 months into that year, with a clear understanding that they have to report to the council at 11 months, and that at the 12th month, we're going to have a choice. We might choose to continue with Mr. Charlin, because we don't feel that the search was adequate. We might choose not to continue with Mr. Charlin and initiate our own process, but we wanted to give ourselves choices, or we might choose to basically look at the choices seriously and make a recommendation. The commission might have chosen that, might be coming to us with a recommendation. So I thought what this motion was doing was a compromise of a previous compromise in bringing all the sides together in the united thing. I think what we all agreed upon was that Mr. Charlin needed about a year to finish the work he initiated, and then we needed to have some choices. And that's what I thought this motion was doing. And that's why I'm supporting it. We're initiating a new process, and the process very plainly says, Mr. Charlin, we're going to give you a year to do your work. It also says that we want the commission to initiate that search 9 months into it and to come to us and report to us at 11 months and basically tell us what our choices are going to be, because at the 12th month, we're going to make decisions. Hopefully, they're the decisions that are in conjunction with what the commission is doing. And if they're not, we have the right to make different decisions. What we don't impede at this time is the year that Mr. Charlin needs to continue to do the work. I'm really concerned about the direction of the agency as a whole and what happens in our policy making as to how we keep that agency intact and allow it to do its work.
Thank you. Mrs. Chick?
Yes, just very briefly, a clarifying question. We're talking about the work that Mr. Charlin has been brought on board to do, and certainly it's been my understanding that a big piece of that was to create a restructuring plan. Am I correct that the rest of the work we're talking about is because you have created a restructuring plan, am I correct?
We've created it on paper. We haven't implemented it yet.
Well, that was my next question. Is the rest of the work that we're talking about is yours to do and to accomplish in this year period, potentially? Is that to implement the restructuring plan, the restructure plan?
It's to implement the restructuring plan, to work on work process issues and computer information system issues that integrates all of that.
So to kind of reorganize the department, turn it around to a healthier path?
I think of it as really two aspects. One is to try to get better focus so that there's a possibility of long-term economic viability and productivity in terms of its work. The other element really relates to efficiency, and there are various aspects of it related to team building and things like that.
That I think you laid out some of those principles in the memorandum that was to your staff and copied to us. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Holden?
Yeah, Mr. President, members, Jerry and I have a good relationship. After having said that, doing my duty as a council person, I think the questions should be asked and answered. And I have no problem with going into closed session and then voting on this. There are some people who filed a lawsuit against the city as a result of the action that you took at the CRA. And we like to have some background information on that. That's fine. As to your contract, what's before us, 1, 2, 3, and 4 items, I cannot vote for item 2, and it would have to be omitted before. The other terms, you're going to buy off on that anyway. But whereas the board chairperson, along with the CLA, the city attorney, CAO, no. I think it's the responsibility of the city council to oversee that. We are an overseeing committee of the CRA. That's already been established by ordinance. So therefore, if that is in fact the case, then we should look at this very, very important agreement that's imminently or about to take place. So that's my view on that. As to the people who came before the committee, as I said to you, speaking on your behalf, all of the people who work for CRA, it was like self-serving, and I said that, and it should be mentioned here. The lobbyists who came to speak, and there were many of them, it was also self-serving and disturbing because they're lobbyists. They would be coming to you and to the board members and to us at different times asking for special favors. I had a problem with that. But it doesn't take away from your ability, given the case what it is, to do this job, as long as you can be fair and open-minded. But I must tell you that that was poorly orchestrated, in my view. Now, if you strike 2, go into closed session, come out, whatever you want to do, then I would not have a problem with it. I just don't want us to impose on the incoming mayor this appointment and all this confusion that's going on there in non-CRA and what's likely to occur between now and the end of the term. I want to say one other thing. In this agreement, now you sitting there in the chair, you can't barely walk. I know what it's like. Now, if we give you a contract and then you go out on disability for a year or 2, what does that do to us? I mean, I want to ask the city attorney some questions. Maybe I do that in closed session. I mean, you're going to have an operation, I believe, the way you're moving around. Like Ms. Goldberg, she recovered very quickly. I've been agonizing for 25, 30 years over this back. And I'm not, I guess there are those who wish I'd be disabled, but I'm not. But in any case, those are some of my concerns. I just cannot vote for 2. If you wanted, you read it, it's not important to you, then I move that we omit 2. or at least include in it that it will come back to the city council for ratification or their consideration, because we are oversight, Mr. Pacheco. We are the oversight. And I want you to respond to that, Mr. Pacheco.
Mr. Holden, that was such an eloquent speech. I will, I've been so moved, I will remove item number 2 from the motion.
Fuhrer?
All this poignancy is getting me teared up, actually. I want to say a couple things. You know, as we've gone through this process, I think it was Mike who referred to the fact this has been evolving over time. Because there are some balances that we're trying to strike as we are performing our oversight role. On the one hand, I think there's probably a consensus, perhaps a unanimous view among the council members, that of course, when looking for the permanent general manager of the CRA, we want to conduct a national search. That could include, and should, in my view, include, but not be limited to, obviously, our interim general manager, to be sure we have the best leadership at the CRA. That national search needs to begin at some point. Question and balancing is exactly when is that. The other principle with which I agree, at least, is you can't continue to have an agency that's in disarray, that is leaderless, where the staff doesn't know to whom to turn for direction. So you have to try to find a way to preserve some element of continuity as that search goes forward. Now, I have not been that close to this. I understand that basically the original thought was maybe a 3-year extension of Mr. Charlin's term. Then there was extensive debate about a 2-year extension of Mr. Charlin's term. And now the action is narrowed even further, so that what's on the table is, I think, 6 months versus a year, and the question, when does the search start? We continue to get closer and closer to establishing a consensus that all of us, I think, would like to see. I am of the view that the year extension, irrespective of what the options are, but the year's extension is a sensible thing to do. When the search starts, be it 9 months, 8 months, 6 months, something in that range, that general territory is territory with which I am comfortable. The point that Ms. Mizikowski made, that it's important for us to not hire somebody too early on and not have a place that person to go and therefore lose that person, I think is a salient point. That's a good thought. So I think we're getting very close. Mr. Pacheco just eliminated one provision of 11D. I think we'd all like to get to a complete consensus here, but if we can't, I think a year makes sense, and something in the range of Mr. Pacheco's 9 months, a little bit less or more, it isn't that big a deal to me, is probably the right place to be. That gets us close to having agreement on the basic principles that have led us here in the first place.
Mr. Pacheco?
The one comment I wanted to make, which was something that Councilmember Hernandez brought up earlier, is one of the advantages we have right now with the process we're putting in place is that it's already public that we have an interim and we are searching for a permanent person. We are just formalizing the process 9 months from now. So one could view it that the process is beginning today in terms of an announcement that we're going to have a new administrator at the CRA. It all depends on how you want to look at it.
Yes, and in seconding that, Mr. Ridley Thomas, I would like to just slightly expand on it. I think the immediate focus, the crisis issue, both for the school district and for us in the city, are the land use school siting issues. But what I would like, particularly the CLA, I think, to report back on, in conjunction with the school district, are some recommendations on a structure for continuing to go forward. It is somewhat, I think, of a disgrace to look back historically and see the lack of teamwork and working relationship that has occurred amongst people who all care about educating our children. And we have issues such as joint use agreements, we have parking issues, and believe me, we all know we have school traffic and safety issues. So we have our different city departments and school entities working together, but it's never risen to a true partnership. So in that report, if we could direct CLA, CAO, any relevant city departments planning to work with the school district in coming back with, in that report, recommendations on how to disallow a past lack of formal contact and create it going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hernandez.
Members of the council, and again, Mr. Miller and Ms. Fields, now I'm going to get real specific to Belmont, because I think I need you to answer some questions to all my colleagues. When Belmont was initially proposed, what was being proposed was a junior high school on the corner of, I guess, Temple and Beaudry. And we understood the need of that junior high school, and it was supportive. And the Central City West plan was looking at building housing on the majority of that land. And we had dealt with the State Department of Toxic Substance Contaminations and so forth, and we knew that there would have to be mitigation. When the school district, and not with my consultation or not with any dialogue with me, chose to buy the rest of the land to build a high school, okay, I was upset because it was displacing the potential for the development of the housing that the Central City West plan called for. And the school district made a commitment to replace that housing, even though they knew they weren't going to get state allocation for that kind of purpose. They also made a commitment to build all this open space in terms of the fields and the recreation facility, and I made a commitment to work with the school district and try to make that a reality, because that was something that was definitely needed for the community. And I felt that those were mitigation measures. And so that you know, we went to the school district and we asked that you also participate in basically taking out a conditional use permit for the mixed use portion, the store, the retail component, and you agreed to do that. And part of that we were talking about is how do we deal with the traffic mitigation. And we knew that because you were doing this private sector part, you would have to come to the city. Now what's happened is you made a recommendation based on a lot of other issues to basically not build a school, not open the school there. Even though you did an EIR under the guise of building a school. Now you're talking about administrative offices. Now you're talking about warehouse space. Now you're talking about trips, automobile traffic and congestion along the Glendale corridor that we're dealing with on an ongoing basis. My question to you, are you going to redo the EIR? Are you going to deal with the mitigation measures for your proposed reuse of the site? Or are you just going to use your authority and do what you want to do? Because it's not even broaching the issue of the commitments to the community, and I'm talking about the commitments you've made to this council. And I need you to answer that question for us today. And if you have to go back to the board, you have to tell us that. But I'm talking about previous commitments made to this council.
All right, Mrs. Walters is not back yet. Oh, I'm sorry, go
You
ahead.
can answer
Go
my
ahead.
questions.
Go ahead.
No, we will go back to the board, Mr. Hernandez, with your requests. The one thing we learned, I think, when you say you're just going ahead and do something without us, is that whatever the state of the law may be, we have to work with you, and that's why we're here today. But in terms of the technical answers to your questions, we'll go back to the board. I'll get an answer specifically back to you on those questions.
Okay, so I made the question very specific for that purpose, and if you want me to follow through on that, I want to.
Great. Thank you
Sorry,
very much.
Okay. All right, it's your turn. You have to be at your microphone. I just want to remind you, we do have a motion on the floor to incorporate all the suggestions that have been made today into the CLA report that we're expecting back in 30 days. Mr. Holden.
Hey, Mr. Miller.
Hold on, it's Mr. Holden's time. Go.
We've attached to that.
Okay.
Mr. Miller, I'm not going to ask you to respond to the question. I'm just going to make a statement. I'm over in this corner. The Belmont High School, if it had been continuously developed and students would have been occupying that school today, and that's a school that you really needed, and you still do. It is my opinion and the opinion of people that I talk to, especially some of my colleagues and people who are directly affected by it, who have moved out, whose kids would perhaps go to school there, who lived there before, don't have the same kind of fear that has been suggested by some members of the school board and their legal spokespersons. I would seriously, speaking on their behalf and myself, urge you to consider moving forward, unless you find some strong evidence why you shouldn't, to finish that school, open it up, and solve some of your student population problems. It's been a political contest in the eyes of many, and it turns out to be essentially nothing more, given the fact that people lived there before. It would certainly make me feel good and others that if that school were to go ahead and be completed and open up, then of course you're perhaps halfway home when it comes to some of your high schools. You do have eminent domain, and the school district does, over all local government agencies. But that's a right that should not be abused. In some cases, I can say that it has been. In my district, it was about to happen at Mount Vernon Junior High School, and also certainly at the Ambassador site. It's been 10, 12 years. The State Allocation Board voted to give the money, then they voted to take the money away, then they voted to give the money, and you know the rest is history. And the businesses moved out, so by the fact that the school district wanted to be there, to destroy the business community. They did not want to be near high school, as Hollywood High School you're unable to develop around that school site. They just don't merge together too well. Now you're going to have a middle school there, maybe it'll work out, I don't know. But I think we have to think more carefully about how we do what we do and try and get some support from the community to find out what impact it's going to make. This city lost a tremendous tax base. The space for rental was $2 a square foot. It went down to 75 cents when they talked about putting the school in. How would you like to own a building there and have that happen to you? They lost their buildings. They lost their high-rise building. They lost their life investments and their savings. I think we just have to think about it more thoroughly next time and give some consideration to people who will be harmed and hurt.
Mr.
At the
Holden.
same time, my time is up again. I'm 8 seconds over. Okay, thank you.
9, 10, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Holden. Mrs. Walters is still not back in the room. There's nobody else wishing to speak. So let me ask the makers, I guess it's actually only Mr. Fewer, you had made a motion. Would you be comfortable incorporating yours into Mark's motion that it
We're on
all
the
come
same
back
page.
together?
Absolutely.
I think so. All
Absolutely.
right.
It's a
So
team effort.
what's before us then is the original report with Mr. Ridley Thomas's amendment to incorporate Mr. Fewer's and all the other suggestions that
Hernandez,
have
Fewer,
been
check.
made.
Believe, have
Right.
you received?
That's right, but that's all, everything's now incorporated into what we want the
It's a
CLA to
consensus
come
thing.
back and report to us from. And that being said, open the roll.
Thank you.
Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 eyes.
That is approved. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Miller and Mrs. Fields, for being here. And please stay in close touch.
And may I say, just for a moment before we leave, how much we value this collaboration, not just because the governments have an interest, but because we value the enormous experience that each of you has in these land use issues, and we need all the help we can get, and we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next item.
Item number 18, a request to continue that matter until January 25th.
If there's no objection to continuing item 18, so ordered, January 25th. Next item.
On the regular agenda are closed session items, so now is time for public comment on non-agenda items.
Seeing no cards, the public comment period is now closed. Next item.
Motions for posting and referral.
Without objection, so ordered.
Request for excuse from council. Councilmember Pacheco requests to be excused on Friday, March 24th for city business.
Does that meet policy?
Meets policy.
Then I think we should let him do it.
And now it's time for closed session items.
All right, we're going to go into closed session, so if everybody who is not involved in the closed session items would please leave, preferably expeditiously, we would appreciate it.
Okay, we are back into open session. I need to make the announcement that the City Council has lost a quorum due to previously excused council members needing to attend to their business. So without any further ado, the council meeting is adjourned.